"You're slowing us down with your pointless worries," Noah Bennett, my new boss, barked, sliding a termination notice across the glossy wooden desk in the construction site's temporary office. "We need people who prioritize deadlines, not nitpickers stirring up problems." His voice was sharp, his eyes locked on mine, as though he were waiting for me to explode. Ethan Caldwell, 48 years old, I sat there, feeling my pulse throb in my chest. 25 years working construction sites across Denver, Colorado, from a grunt hauling rebar to a foreman at Apex Builders. I never imagined I'd end up here. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I picked up the paper, skimming the cold lines declaring my contract terminated for non-compliance and obstructing progress. A curt nod was all I gave Noah. "I'll clear out my locker," I said, my voice steady, gripping my worn, hard hat. Noah shoved a cardboard box toward me. "Your personal stuff's already packed. Security will walk you to your truck." The word security hit like a slap, as if I, who'd spent a lifetime building solid structures, were a threat. As if 25 years of showing up early, staying late, and giving my all meant nothing. As if warning about serious safety violations made me the dangerous one. I stood, grabbed the box without checking it, and walked out. Denver's May air was crisp, carrying the familiar smell of concrete dust and machine oil. A young security guard, barely in his 20s, shuffled awkwardly beside me, avoiding eye contact. A few workers on the Skyline Towers site, Apex's biggest project yet, noticed what was happening. They paused, hammers and drills falling silent for a moment. I gave them a slight nod, not a goodbye but a warning. Be careful. As I climbed into my beat-up Ford F-150, I glanced in the rearview mirror and saw Noah already talking to my replacement, some young guy nodding eagerly, probably promising to speed things up no matter the cost. Driving away from the site, I felt a strange hollowness in my chest. Not anger, but the emptiness of someone who'd just had the thing that defined their life ripped away. But I knew this wasn't the end. They didn't know I wasn't done yet. I was born and raised in Boulder, an hour's drive from Denver. My dad, Henry Caldwell, was a carpenter who taught me shortcuts create weaknesses, and weaknesses always collapse. He'd sit at the kitchen table wiping down his handsaw and say, "Do it right the first time, Ethan, even if no one else knows. Your name's on the work, and that's what you leave behind." That philosophy sank deep, guiding every decision I made. I started on construction sites at 18, hauling materials under Colorado's blistering summer sun. Over the years, I learned to hear a site's rhythm, the smooth hum of a well-run crane, the steady roar of an excavator, or the off-key creak of a structure under too much stress. More importantly, I learned to spot when things weren't right. A hairline crack in concrete, a slightly off-center steel beam, or a bolt below grade could mean the difference between a sturdy building and a disaster. Skyline Towers was the pinnacle of my career. A 10-story complex of offices and luxury apartments, it promised to transform Denver's fast-growing Lodo district. But the project was behind schedule from the start, plagued by harsh weather and early design flaws. The pressure from Apex's higher-ups was like a knife to the throat, and things got worse when they brought in Noah Bennett as project manager. Noah, in his mid-30s, came from some fancy firm in San Francisco. He showed up in a crisp suit, tablet always in hand, with an arrogance that oozed confidence. On his first day, he toured the site, tapping notes without touching materials or talking to the crew beyond curt introductions. I tried to connect, But Noah didn't seem interested in a foreman's experience. "We need to modernize how things are done here," he said in a meeting, glancing at me as though I were a relic of a bygone era. Trouble started fast. Within Noah's first month, safety briefings were cut from 15 minutes to 5, often just half-hearted reminders. Material checks got sloppy. Instead of thorough measurements, the quality team gave cursory glances and signed off. Detailed record-keeping was relaxed, all in the name of optimizing time. When I pushed back, Noah called me into his office and said, "Ethan, you're experienced, but you need to adapt. This industry's changing. We can't slow down over tiny details." "Tiny details?" I shot back, keeping my tone even. "A weak brace could collapse a whole floor. That's not tiny." Noah shrugged, eyes glued to his tablet. The engineering team signed off. "Just stick to the plan." I started documenting everything. Photos of substandard temporary supports, emails I sent Noah flagging concerns, notes from conversations where Colorado law allowed recording. I saved it all to my personal cloud storage, in my personal account, not the company's system. Some might call it covering my ass. I called it doing my job right. The breaking point came one May morning when I found they'd swapped out structural bolts on floors 4 and 5 with lower-grade ones than the blueprints specified. The difference wasn't obvious unless you checked closely, but in an earthquake or high winds, not rare in Colorado, it could lead to catastrophic failure. I brought both types of bolts to Noah's office, setting them on his desk. "We need to replace these now," I said, my voice firm. "These won't hold the designed load." Noah glanced at them, then said, "The supplier says they're within acceptable limits. We're not delaying the steel team over this." I tried to argue, but he cut me off. "Ethan, if you can't keep up, maybe this role isn't for you." That was the first time I felt the real threat. 2 days later, I was called into his office and handed the termination notice. Driving home, the cardboard box sat quietly on the passenger seat, like a silent companion. My wife, Sarah, was still working the afternoon shift at Denver Health, where she'd been a nurse for 15 years. I parked in our driveway and sat there for an hour, staring at the house we bought 12 years ago. It's a modest 2-story and 5 points, with a faded wooden fence and an asphalt roof starting to leak. I'd planned to replace the roof myself this summer, a project Sarah and I mapped out to save money. Now I had the time, but maybe not the cash. Inside, I set the box on the kitchen table and opened it. My daily thermos, a few notebooks with work notes, a framed photo of me and Sarah at Rocky Mountain National Park, her bright smile under a fiery sunset. But my personal tools were missing. A top-notch Milwaukee drill, a laser measure, a specialized gauging kit, all worth about $2,500. Those weren't just possessions. They were part of me, built up over decades of work. I sat down, listed the missing items, and called Apex's HR. The woman on the phone said hesitantly, "I'll look into it, Mr. Caldwell. But per Mr. Bennett's report, you were terminated for non-compliance and creating a hostile work environment." The word hostile almost made me laugh, if not for the bitterness rising in my throat. I never raised my voice to Noah, not once. "Interesting," I said. "I want the termination reasons in writing, and I want my tools back. If not, we'll talk through lawyers." She promised to call back, but I knew it was an empty promise. I opened my laptop, checked my personal email. In neatly organized folders were 89 safety violations I'd documented over the past 6 months, from minor issues like missing warning signs to major ones like those substandard bolts. Each had photos, emails, recordings, Undeniable proof. This wasn't just about my termination. This was about the 300 people who'd work in Skyline Towers. The crew unaware of what was hidden behind drywall and underfloors. Every corner cut a potential death trap. I started drafting an email to OSHA's regional office. The subject line was simple. Urgent. Multiple severe safety violations at Skyline Towers. I worked carefully, categorizing violations by severity, cross-referencing them with building codes, and attaching evidence. Hours passed, the laptop screen the only light in the darkening kitchen. Sarah came home at 9 p.m., still in her nurse's scrubs, hair tied high but eyes tired. "Ethan, what's going on?" she asked, setting her bag down. I told her everything, from the termination to the violations I'd documented. Sarah stood behind me, hands on my shoulders, reading the draft email. "They'll come after you," she said softly, her voice mixing worry and resolve. "Let them try," I replied, still typing. "You might not get another job in Denver." I paused, looking at her. "Sarah, some things matter more than a paycheck." She squeezed my shoulders, giving a sad smile. "I know. That's why I married you." I hit send at 10:03 p.m., my heart pounding but lighter, like I'd shed a weight. Then I started another email to Colorado's State Building Inspection Office. At 7:30 the next morning, my phone rang. "Noah." "What the hell do you think you're doing, Ethan?" His voice was taut, laced with anger and panic. "Good morning, Noah," I said, sitting at the kitchen table with a cold coffee. "I just got a call upon from OSHA. They say there's a complaint about the site." "That you?" "I documented legitimate safety concerns, that's all. You got fired for causing trouble and now you're proving me right." Noah's tone softened, as though he were trying to negotiate. "Look, Ethan, I get you're pissed, but this vendetta won't help you land another job. I've already had calls from other companies asking about you." The threat was clear. Keep going, and I'd be blacklisted in Denver's construction world. "If the site's up to code, you've got nothing to worry about," I said, my voice calm but firm. Noah snorted. "We both know inspections can be subjective. One guy's violation is another's acceptable variance. But what's not subjective is how this industry views disgruntled ex-employees trying to sabotage projects." "Like my tools?" "Sabotage?" I asked. A pause. "What tools?" "The ones that weren't returned. I've reported them stolen to the police." A small lie, but Noah's response, a long silence, said it all. "Fine, keep your damn tools, call it severance, but drop this OSHA crap before you hurt yourself." "Goodbye, Noah." I hung up, my hands shaking slightly from adrenaline. I immediately called Denver PD to file a theft report. They took the details, but the officer wasn't optimistic about recovery. "We'll look into it, but these cases are tough," he said. I hung up, a wave of helplessness rising, but I pushed it down. This wasn't the time to falter. Next, I reached out to 3 construction firms I had good ties with: Peak Pulse Construction, Stone Peak Builders, and Rocky Mountain Contractors. 2 didn't respond to my emails or calls. The head of Peak Pulse, the owner's son and an old friend, called back at noon. "I want to help, Ethan, I do," he said, sounding apologetic. "But our crew's full, and well, there's some talk." "Talk about what?" I asked, though I knew the answer. "That you're tough to work with. That you stir up trouble." He hesitated. "Look, my dad respects you, but the industry's tight right now. Maybe try again in a few months, when things cool off." By mid-afternoon, I got a similar response from Stone Peak. Word spreads fast in Denver's construction scene, especially in a city this size. Noah wasn't bluffing about those calls. He was trying to smear me, paint me as difficult, so no one would hire me. At 4:15 p.m., an unknown number called. It was a lawyer for Apex Builders, his voice smooth and cold. "Mr. Caldwell, I'm calling to inform you that further communications from you regarding Skyline Towers could be deemed defamatory and lead to legal action." I gripped the phone tighter. "You mean Apex will sue me for reporting safety violations to regulators?" "I'm saying your portrayal of standard industry practices as violations appears retaliatory, given the timing," the lawyer replied. "Moreover, you removed confidential project materials upon leaving the company, which constitutes theft of intellectual property." I almost laughed at their audacity. I hadn't taken anything. All my records were made on my personal phone and stored in my private account, perfectly legal. But they were trying to build a case to discredit me. "Send me a formal cease and desist if that's your stance," I said. "Otherwise, I've got nothing more to say." 3 days later, a thick envelope from Apex's law firm arrived at my house. Inside was a letter demanding I stop defaming the company, threatening lawsuits if I continued, and referencing a non-disclosure agreement they claimed I signed when hired. I'd never signed any such thing, but fighting them would take a lawyer, and I couldn't afford one right now. Sarah and I had used most of our savings to pay off the mortgage and cover her mom's medical bills last year. Our bank account was dangerously low. A week after my termination, I sat at Corner Diner in downtown Denver, sipping coffee and scrolling news on my phone. Skyline Towers was still chugging along, like my exit hadn't left a ripple. Suddenly, Marcus Tate, the project's lead electrician and my colleague of 12 years, slid into the booth across from me. "This is probably a bad idea," he said, glancing over his shoulder like he was worried about being tailed. "Definitely," I replied, pushing my coffee aside. "How's the site?" Marcus sighed, his weathered face showing the strain. "A mess. Noah's got everyone working overtime to fix issues before OSHA shows up. They're scheduled for Monday." I nodded, not surprised. "They're swapping out bolts and reinforcing supports you flagged." Marcus leaned in, his voice barely above a whisper. "But there's bigger stuff, Ethan. They've been fudging material records for months. Remember that concrete batch that failed the strength test back in March?" I remembered it well. The first concrete pour for the foundation had troubling results, only 80% of the required strength. Noah said follow-up tests cleared it, and I trusted him, since I had no reason to doubt him then. "They didn't retest," Marcus went on, his eyes sharp. "They just fixed the paperwork. Same with fire resistance ratings on some materials. The manufacturer sent a notice about a bad batch, but it got buried." My stomach tightened, a cold chill running down my spine. "How do you know?" "Lena in procurement," Marcus said. "She kept her own records, worried about liability. When she heard you got fired, she came to me." He slid a small black USB drive across the table like he was passing a live grenade. "Copies of the original records versus what they submitted to inspectors." I stared at the drive, my hand hesitating. "Why are you doing this, Marcus?" "You're a few years from retirement." Marcus looked me dead in the eye, unwavering. "My son's leasing office space in that building when it's done, and I was raised to do what's right. Like you." I took the drive, feeling its small but heavy weight. "They'll know it came from you." "Probably," Marcus shrugged, "but I'm old enough not to care." After Marcus left, I drove to the Denver Public Library, where I could use a computer without being traced. I plugged in the USB and opened the files. What I saw made my blood run cold. The records showed systematic fraud, not just cutting corners or sloppiness, but deliberate falsification of safety and material quality tests. Substandard concrete, low-grade steel, fire-resistant materials that didn't meet code, all covered up with fake paperwork. This wasn't just Noah's doing. The records implicated senior procurement managers and project executives. Skyline's bid was deliberately lowballed to win the contract, and they made up the difference with cheap materials, saving millions. On the drive home, I passed the site. The building was up to the 7th floor, its steel frame rising against Denver's skyline, glinting in the sunset. I thought of the people who'd worked there, office workers, families in luxury apartments, clueless about the dangers hidden in the walls and floors. A quiet anger flared, but I tamped it down. Anger wouldn't fix this. Action would. That night, Sarah came home with news. "I ran into Karen Walsh at the hospital today," she said, sitting at the kitchen table with a mug of tea. Karen was married to a Denver City Council member. She said Apex donated heavily to the mayor's campaign and a few council members last year, right before they got fast-tracked zoning approval for Skyline. I stopped chopping vegetables for dinner, the knife hovering over the cutting board. "How fast?" "2 weeks," Sarah replied. "Normally takes 3 months." The pieces clicked. Political connections, rushed approvals, corner cutting, faked records. This wasn't just negligence. It was systemic corruption. I called my OSHA contact, leaving a voicemail that I had new documents they needed to see before the inspection. Then I forwarded Marcus's files to OSHA and the State Building Inspection Office, with a detailed email explaining everything. The next morning, I got an unexpected call from Walter Grayson, Apex Builders' retired founder. "We need to talk, Ethan," he said, his voice grave, carrying the weight of someone who'd seen plenty of storms. I agreed to meet at his home in the suburbs, near Cherry Creek Lake, a quiet area with big wooden houses and manicured lawns. Walter, 70, greeted me at the door with a firm handshake. He still had the calloused hands and straight posture of a man who'd worked sites for decades. We sat on his porch, looking out at the lake shimmering in the morning sun. "I shouldn't have let Liam take over," he said, his voice heavy with regret. He always cared more about growth than quality, but I didn't think he'd go this far. "You know about the faked records?" I asked. Walter nodded, sipping his coffee. "Heard from some old-timers. When your OSHA complaint hit, people called me. They're worried not just about Skyline, but Apex's reputation." He paused, staring into the distance. "What you don't know is Skyline's not just a project. It's the foundation for Apex to bid on the Denver Health Hospital expansion, a $120 million contract. If OSHA finds serious violations, they'll lose everything." I felt the weight of that. Apex wasn't just protecting Skyline. They were protecting their entire future. "I've been digging too," Walter went on. "Liam doesn't know I still have access to some company accounts. I've got records of irregular payments to city inspectors, altered test results, the works." He looked at me, his eyes steady. "I built Apex on my reputation. I won't let them destroy it or build death traps with my name on them." We spent 2 hours planning. Walter would present his evidence to the board, forcing internal action. I'd work with OSHA to ensure a thorough inspection they couldn't dodge. Before I left, Walter put a hand on my shoulder. "You're doing the right thing, Ethan, but it won't be easy." I nodded, feeling the sincerity in his words. "I know, but I don't have a choice. The next day, a Denver Post reporter, Emily Carter, called. She'd heard about the OSHA complaint through a source. "I'm working on a story about construction safety oversight," she explained. "Your name came up regarding concerns at Skyline." I was careful with my words, knowing a misstep could let Apex sue me for defamation. "I confirm I reported safety issues through proper channels," I said. "Beyond that, I can't comment on an ongoing investigation." "We've heard rumors of falsified safety records," Emily pressed. "Can you confirm?" I weighed my response. "I'd suggest requesting public records on the project's approvals and inspections. That's all I can say." Emily thanked me and hung up. I knew she'd dig, and that's exactly what I needed. The article ran 3 days later with a bold headline: "Serious Safety Allegations at Skyline Towers Project." It didn't name me directly, but mentioned a former foreman with grave concerns about structural integrity and record-keeping practices. The fallout was swift. That afternoon, the mayor's office issued a statement expressing full confidence in the city's building inspection process and promising transparent cooperation with regulators. The next morning, Marcus texted, "OSHA's here. Not a scheduled visit. Multiple inspectors." I smiled. A small victory. The article had sped things up. 2 hours later, Walter called. "The board's called an emergency meeting tomorrow. I'm presenting everything." "How's Liam taking it?" I asked. "He doesn't know yet," Walter replied. "He's at the site dealing with OSHA." Things moved faster than we expected. That evening, a courier delivered an envelope. Inside was a formal job offer from Ironclad Construction, a reputable firm in Boulder with a Denver branch. The company's owner, Jack Thornton, was an old friend of Walter's, though the letter didn't mention that. Reading it, I felt the first spark of hope in days. Maybe I still had a future in this industry. Near midnight, Marcus texted, "Noah got sacked on the spot. Senior management from HQ is taking over the project." Justice came fast when the dominoes started falling. But I knew Apex would try to limit damage by scapegoating Noah, claiming he acted alone. So Walter and I agreed on the final step. He'd submit all evidence to the State Attorney General's office with a request for a criminal investigation into corporate fraud. 3 weeks after my termination, I stood at the back of a Denver County courtroom as Colorado's Department of Labor and Industry announced its findings. Reporters filled half the seats. Apex executives and city officials sat up front. Liam Grayson, Walter's son and Apex's CEO, sat rigid beside his lawyer, his face a mask of professional concern. The past 2 weeks he'd tried to position himself as a problem solver, publicly thanking the whistleblower for catching isolated issues and pledging cooperation. The commissioner's voice cut through the murmurs. "After a thorough investigation, we've confirmed systemic and intentional fraud in safety documentation at Skyline Towers. The violations are severe enough that we're ordering an immediate halt to construction." Cameras flashed as she continued. "We're also recommending criminal prosecution of 3 Apex executives for willfully endangering public safety and worker welfare through fraudulent practices. One of those was Liam Grayson." I saw him whisper urgently to his lawyer, who just shook his head. No easy out this time. Walter stood beside me, his face grim but resolute. He'd sacrificed his relationship with his son to do what was right. Neither of us took joy in Apex's collapse, but we knew it was necessary. The commissioner closed by thanking the whistleblowers whose evidence prevented a potential catastrophe. She didn't name names, but Liam turned, his eyes scanning the crowd until they found me. I met his gaze, not with anger or triumph, just as a man who'd done his job right, no matter the cost. 6 months later, I stood on the foundation of Denver Health's new hospital wing. My hard hat now bore Ironclad Construction's logo, and my title was Senior Project Manager. The concrete beneath my feet was poured to specification, with full testing and documentation. Every step was deliberate, verified, and done right from the start. Skyline Towers had been demolished to its foundation and was being rebuilt by a coalition of local firms under strict oversight. Apex Builders was gone, dissolved amid criminal charges and civil lawsuits. Liam Grayson took a plea deal in exchange for testimony against other executives and city officials who'd looked the other way. Walter sold his retirement home to fund support for workers who lost jobs in the fallout. Not everyone was on my side. Some in the industry still saw me as the guy who tanked a major company, costing jobs. Others quietly thanked me for protecting the standards that keep everyone safe. Marcus is now my electrical foreman. Lena from procurement joined Ironclad too. We brought along good people, all committed to doing things right. Sarah and I replaced our roof ourselves on evenings and weekends. The physical work helped me through months of legal meetings and hearings. "Ready for inspection?" my assistant asked, holding a clipboard. "Always," I replied, smiling. Ethan Caldwell's journey is a testament to the power of integrity in the darkest moments. He chose to protect the safety of hundreds of strangers over staying silent to save his career. This story reminds us that doing what's right is never easy, but it's the foundation of a society worth living in. Every choice, no matter how small, can spark big change. From Ethan's meticulous records to Marcus's courage and Walter's painful decision, it shows how personal responsibility can dismantle corrupt systems. More than that, it underscores that honor and truth are non-negotiable, even in the face of threats, isolation, or financial loss.